Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to the car. It is early morning here in Sweden, and I'm out doing some recycling errands. And I thought I would talk a bit about specialization and over specialization because that's something that happened to me in the first part of my programming career. So, what I mean by over specialization is that I ended up having a very narrow focus to the type of programming I would do. When I worked at Apple for many years, my job was browser engine performance optimization and specifically WebKit engine. And that's all that I did every day was just profile web pages in WebKit and then try to come up with optimizations to make those web pages load faster or run faster or whatever. And it was just a constant stream of tasks like that. And I remember at the time, whenever I would be in a conversation with coworkers, if we would talk about WebKit or performance optimization, I was happy to talk to people about programming. But whenever we would slide outside of those sort of areas, I would become kind of intimidated and I would hesitate to talk, and I would sort of pull back and be more withdrawn and quiet. And I just didn't feel comfortable talking about programming when it wasn't related to those areas where I felt like I was an expert. And in retrospect, I think somebody on my team, I forget if it was my manager or a teammate, but somebody said that the hyper specialized expert is sort of the ideal Apple employee. And what Apple wants with its employees is to just allow the individual to become a super specialized expert at one thing, become really great at that, and then continue to develop and research and improve that tiny area of the Apple software ecosystem that they are an expert at. And that's certainly what was happening to me. And I understand why the company would want to do that. It makes perfect sense. You know, if you have a large team that works on large software, it's perfectly reasonable to have a bunch of narrow experts, each trying to push the boundaries of their tiny little domain. But that wouldn't really work as well in a smaller project or a smaller team, right? Where everybody has to pull more weight. It's harder to get away with being a super specialist expert in a 3-person team compared to a 300-person team. But that aside, I really feel like the personal aspect, sort of the personal development aspect of constantly grinding specialty rather than going a bit broader, it was maybe a bit mentally unhealthy for me because it as I said, it made me feel kind of withdrawn and intimidated by conversation with other programmers. And when I started the Serenity OS project, I've talked a lot about how I wanted to have something to do with my time so that I wouldn't do drugs. I would have something else to do, right? But another thing that I also wanted with Serenity OS was to give myself a space where I could become a much better programmer by like tackling all kinds of programming tasks and being forced to engage with different types of programming, different styles, and so on. And that has been tremendously helpful for me. And when I first started working on Serenity, I remember being intimidated by all kinds of stupid little things like making a text editor or making an image editor or loading a PNG file or like sending a TCP packet, um, all kinds of little things that I hadn't done before, and I was not an expert at them, and so they would kind of make me feel this dread, like, oh, um, don't really want to engage with that because I'm really comfortable being an expert. Even if I'm an expert at a very tiny slice of things, it is comfortable being an expert. Um, but it is very, very limiting to become comfortable with that. So now, 4 years into the Serenity OS project, I am so happy that I did this because I am just infinitely more comfortable with programming today and talking about programming. And I don't remember the last time I was intimidated by somebody else's programming skills or knowledge. And not because, intimidation is interesting because, at least in my experience, it's not the other person that is intimidating, because they know so much or they're so good at something, but intimidation comes from within because you have perception of your own skills or your own knowledge as too small. And that's sort of where the intimidation comes from. And now that I'm more comfortable and I've written tons of little programs that do tons of little things, I just feel like, I don't know, I just have a greater understanding of software and programming, I guess. And it's not a deep understanding, it's just a broader understanding. And I'm really happy about that. And it's something that I really want to encourage in other people, and I've been trying to encourage it in other people by getting folks to work on parts of Serenity that interest them, and just trying to build an environment where it's really, really low friction. If you want to go from working on kernel stuff to graphics stuff to sound stuff to whatever, it's all in one repository, one project, and one coding style, one contribution process, and everything. And I think it's been doing some good for a lot of people. At least that's what I've been hearing. That people have really enjoyed sort of coming into the project to work on one thing and then ending up learning about all this other stuff as well. And I wish I would have done that earlier in my life, because I'm 37 years old at this point, and I really feel like only the last 4 years have been sort of open-minded about about programming. Before that, I had a very close-minded view of programming, and I still managed to learn a lot of things, of course, and I became very comfortable with the tools I was using. But the last 4 years have broadened my horizons and expanded my comfort zone in a way that I never knew was possible. So if you're listening to this and you think that you might be overspecialized, or you might be on the track to overspecialization, I would strongly encourage you to try some more things and make it a part of your process to engage with things where you're not an expert. And I guess one thing that I was often confused by, or sort of an excuse I often made, let's put it that way. An excuse I would often make is that, oh, well, I would love to do more types of programming, but look how much time I had to spend to become an expert at browser performance optimizations. And now you want me to spend that much time to become an expert at something else as well? I just don't have that much time. This is sort of the excuse process I would use. At least I remember it that way. And it's totally BS, right? Because Uh, you don't need to become an expert at everything. It's not about becoming an expert at everything. It's about becoming comfortable in more domains of programming, or at least being not uncomfortable in more domains of programming. And you can achieve that with a tiny, tiny time investment. You know, if you've never made a game, you can make a silly game in a weekend. You can, if you've never made a text editor, you can put together a text editor from first principles. If you've never made this, if you've never made that, whatever it is that you have never made, everybody has something that they've never made. And by not just daydreaming about those things, but actually going and trying to do them, even if you just spend a weekend on something, it can have a profound impact on the size and shape of your comfort zone. Because my comfort zone in the past was like this narrow, deep thing. And now it looks more like this, like an upside down pyramid, where I have parts that are really, really deep still, where I'm really extremely comfortable, but I've also widened it so that I have a larger total area. And I suspect everybody would enjoy this more than they would enjoy this. It's certainly more enjoyable to me. So that's something I wanted to talk about today. And I need to continue improving my own comfort zone shape, for sure. One thing is that this upside down pyramid, it's really more like an upside down pyramid and then a narrow thing at the bottom that still goes very deep. And I would like to widen that a bit as well, or at least sort of stretch out the shape of the upside down pyramid a little bit. It's kind of hard to explain with the hands what it is that I'm thinking, but essentially, I feel like I'm much more comfortable with a much broader range of things, but now I also want to become more knowledgeable and not necessarily expert, but like more advanced in some of the topics that we have going on in Serenity, right? So that's something I'm looking forward to in the near future, is to take some of the stuff in Serenity that is pretty basic and learn enough about those areas in order to make it more than just pretty basic, right? To make it a bit more serious and a bit more advanced. So that is sort of on my personal agenda for the year. Anyways, I really appreciate that you were here so I could talk about that. And I need to get back. But yeah, it's good to be back in the car, and it's nice temperature out. So I guess we'll see each other soon again. Bye.